The Shroud of Turin has been a focal point of both devotion and debate. Believed by many to be the burial cloth of Jesus, it has been scrutinized for centuries for signs of authenticity or forgery. When examined with modern scientific tools, the shroud reveals a number of remarkable features that suggest it may indeed be connected to the historical Jesus. Though questions remain, a careful apologetic approach weighs both the evidence and the gaps, ultimately presenting a compelling case while acknowledging the limits of certainty. So, one of the two most striking aspects of the shroud, one is geological and the other is even botanical evidences. The presence of dust and pollen, which is consistent with the area of Jerusalem. Analysis has detected limestone particles that match those exactly from Calvary. The site traditionally identifies the location of Jesus' crucifixion, so such geological specificity is difficult to reconcile with a European forgery because it points to the actual area and even the location of Calvary, or Golgotha. Botanical studies reinforce this. Pollen grains on the shroud originate from plants that's unique to the Near East, the Middle East, Mediterranean. For example, the cistus plant, the everlasting flower, the giant flax, galbanum, and even cedar that's in this area. These species are there in the region around Jerusalem and would likely appear naturally on a European cloth unless it was deliberately transported and all of that burial rite was done there. It would require precise knowledge and effort, I think, unavailable to medieval forgers if that were the case. The fabric is an herringbone pattern linen, so some suggest that the material might originate from India, which rigorous testing indicates the cloth's weaving style is consistent with the first century, though. So even if the cloth was from India and the pattern it was done in India, I mean, that's even more reason to think that this is consistent with first century. I don't like radiocarbon dating, but it has produced interesting results. But the textile analysis demonstrates that the linen matches the methods of production from the first century. So it leads credibility to it being manufactured during the time of Jesus. But what really gets me is two things. But the first is the correlation with the Sudarium of Oviedo. It's a particularly compelling piece of evidence because the Sudarium Oviedo is the bloodstained cloth that supposedly covered Jesus' face, or the man of the shroud's face, at least. That's the fact. Tests reveal that the blood type on both the shroud and the Sudarium is the extremely rare AB positive type. Furthermore, the blood patterns suggest that the Sudarium correlate precisely with the shroud's imprint. So that's amazing in and of itself. But it suggests that there's a direct link between these two relics that reinforces the argument that it was the same individual who, if not crucified, it's a very good forgery, but to be critical. The shroud exhibits extraordinary anatomical and also even historical accuracy. For example, the man in the shroud depicted shows trauma consistent with Roman crucifixions. The nail wounds that are in the wrists, not the palms. There's a crown of thorns impressions, and there are scourge marks across the back. The placement of the nails in the wrist rather than the palms reflects a very realistic understanding of what crucifixion was and the mechanics of crucifixion, because the palms could not support the body weight. Such detail is very, somebody had a very intimate detail of crucifixion, a very deep understanding of crucifixion. But despite all of these compelling factors, I have a couple questions. For instance, some analysis of the Sudarium suggests that the man had long hair arranged in a ponytail or a braid. And it's said in the report from the Sudarium that from the analysis of the Sudarium that the hair went all the way down to like the middle of his back. So I'm not willing to believe that Jesus had long hair like that, but whatever. Also, the hair was sewed to the back of the Sudarium and it was put in a ponytail. And that imprint of a ponytail that was like loosened is there on the Sudarium. And that means that the blood got all over the hair and it left an imprint on the Sudarium itself. So that's one big question that I have. Because I don't think that aligns with the historical, like typical Jewish fashion, but whatever. Additionally, chemical tests reveal that there's no incense residues except for styrax, whereas the gospel accounts describe the use of frankincense, myrrh, and aloes in order to embalm the body. So these discrepancies invite further investigation, but it doesn't necessarily negate the shrouds and the Sudarium's authenticity. I think it might have reflected variations in burial customs or limitations. Maybe there are limitations in our modern scientific analysis and method to detect ancient organic residues such as incense and the like, but I don't know. If we're able to detect the pollen of a particular plant that I don't even know if it still exists in that area of the world anymore, but that it did in fact exist in that time period, I would think that we would be able to detect spikenard, incense, frankincense, myrrh, aloes, stuff like that. Interestingly enough, there's one more thing. There's a scourge mark in the upper back of the man of the shroud, lightly to his left, whose distance from the crown of thorns wound is similar to the corresponding distance measured in the Sudarium of Oviedo, which is 150 millimeters. So if these marks found in the Sudarium are confirmed to be scourge bloodstains, it's a very interesting coincidence between the two cloths and this man, whoever he is in the shroud. The ponytail, that makes me skeptical, along with no particles of spices found on the cloth. So, but my conclusion is the Shroud of Turin presents a very remarkable convergence of geological, botanical, textile, historical, and the forensic evidence pointing to a first century origin in Jerusalem and consistent with crucifixion practices. Again, whoever did this had a very deep understanding, very intimate knowledge of what crucifixion was. So there are certain anomalies like hair arrangement, incense residues, but I think the weight of the evidence cannot be easily dismissed as a medieval forgery. So for those seeking an apologetic defense, I think the shroud remains one of the most compelling physical relics linked to at least first century crucifixion executions. I think we need to continue scientific study, and I think it will definitely provide additional clarity to further illuminate what's really just an extraordinary artifact. I haven't even gotten into the even more interesting details on this piece. The Shroud of Turin continues to give a lot, as well as the Sudarium. So I'm not willing to just say it's just a Catholic forgery. I'm willing to actually give it a little bit of a critique, and as well as ask honest questions such as, the ponytail thing. So